Okay, we've been talking about ultraviolet energy and its effect on germs. Let's talk now about how we can control odors by using a different wavelength of ultraviolet energy light to get gas phase and odor control contaminants out of the air.
Well, Steve, there's a lot of different examples of chemical gases to talk about, but for some reason, it's always one of the hardest things to bring up to homeowners. I mean, we can see particles, not the majority of them, we know that, but we can see certain particles.
We know there's germs in the air.
Yeah, there's germs out there. Everybody knows that. But
I got toxic compounds floating around my house?
Yeah. You know,
come on, John.
We want to talk about it, but we don't have to make it scary. But there are a lot of examples out there, and it's those toxic compounds more than anything else that really build up as that chemical soup when we talk about sick home syndrome. You know, breathing that stuff in, it really causes more effects than anything else. But there's tons of examples. In fact, I think we talked about this in some previous modules. But there's carpet. And carpet off-gases chemicals, or VOCs, the majority of which is formaldehyde. Right. You know, and we know that that's a carcinogen. We've talked about particle wood or plywood in the past. You know, these are these chips of wood that are held together with glues and adhesives, or they're veneers of wood that are held together with glues and adhesives. And those things off-gas. I mean, there's a tremendous example of that. If you guys remember when Hurricane Katrina came through, they moved in a bunch of FEMA trailers down into the Gulf Coast area because a lot of homes were destroyed, and it was the right thing to do to try and help these folks out. But these were all brand new modular homes that got moved in down there. They had a lot of plastics in there, but a lot of this wood as well, and they off-gas so many chemicals. There was a big to-do about all these folks getting sick living in these FEMA trailers, and that's because of these chemicals that were off-gassing in there. You know, show me a home today that doesn't have paints and stains in there. You know, everybody has those things. Cleaning chemicals. You know, we're just spraying more solvents, more chemical compounds in our environment. We talk about the deodorizers that we use, the Lysols, the Oust. I mean, those things even tell you, they warn you on the back of that bottle, use in a well-ventilated area. Don't spray around pets and children. You know, I mean, they'll tell you some pretty, there's some pretty serious precautionary statements with that. There's pesticides. Again, guys, I live in Florida. If you don't spray pesticides around your home, you're going to have cockroaches and those red ants and all kinds of other nasty stuff crawling around you.
Ask my wife about that one.
There's pet odors that we get. It's not just always chemicals, but it's odors that we have in our environment. And there's lots of examples of that. There's pet odors. If I ask you guys, everybody to raise your hand who has a pet, the majority of hands always goes up.
I got one.
Yeah, everybody's got dogs or cats. You know, there's pet dander that's associated with those things. There's smells that are associated with those pets, with their beds and just the pets themselves. It would be great if we didn't have to have kitty litter boxes around. If
teach them how to go to the toilet. Huh?
Yeah, if we could teach our pets to go to the toilet, we'd be in fantastic shape. But we can't. And
they have accidents.
As a technician, tell me as a technician, you've never walked into that crazy cat lady house where there hasn't been 20 cats in there, and boy, it's like getting kicked in the stomach on the way through the door. So there's some pretty serious odors that cats can come up with. But it's cigarette odors. There's garbage odors and cooking odors. There's all sorts of different examples of what these different chemical compounds and what these different gases and odors are.
And one of the studies that have been done is probably the most prevalent one and the most important one out there is done by Harvard University. And this was done back in 2003. It's done by their Silent Spring Institute. And they tested 120 homes on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And what they were looking for was cancer-causing agents, 89 different cancer-causing chemicals that are from household products. What they found is out of the 120 homes, 100% of them had toxic compounds at levels that were symptomatic, that were exceeding safe levels and were making people sick.
In other words, if there were somebody watching our houses, like we have OSHA watching our businesses,
they could shut us down.
They could shut us down. That's how high some of those levels were.
Right. So at levels that were injurious to people's health. And they said this is, if we took one neighborhood and tested 120 homes and 100% of them had the same problem, this is a nationwide problem.
Yeah.
So take any neighborhood across the United States or Canada, and we're going to have toxic compounds at levels that are causing people symptoms. Now, it's not knocking people dead, but over time it can.
Absolutely.
This is one of the most serious things that we have in our in-home environment, and we don't talk about it. You know, we talk about the germs and we talk about the particles, but there's got to be a way of controlling the gas phase contamination of these toxic compounds in the air.
Right, and that's where the EPA comes in again. This is one of the most popular quotes that we probably hear in our industry today, but the EPA says that the air in our homes is 2 to 5 times and can be as much as 100 times more polluted than that worst outdoor air, and that's probably the most dangerous of the three phases of contaminants. It's
Right.
certainly to our health. It affects our heating and cooling systems as well. It can shorten the life of that, but certainly to us breathing that in, it can cause more problems than just about anything else.
So what we dealt with in the last module was UVC energy, which was measured at 254 nanometers. And all a nanometer is a measurement. So I take the wavelength of light and measure between the wavelengths, and it gives it a size. The tighter the size, the closer they are together, the more intense it gets and the more things it can do. So when you get visual light, it lights things up, 380 microwatts or nanometers and above. You get into that 254 range, now it becomes so intense it can kill things or sterilize microorganisms. You get into 185, now you can kill microorganisms as well, but you also can start to oxidize chemicals. So it's the same thing that's happening outside. The sunlight shining, the UVC energy and the ozone, which is the UVB energy, most of that gets filtered out. Not all of it gets down here. Most of the ozone is in the ozone layer.
Yeah, we've all heard of that ozone layer
It's
before.
the stratosphere.
Yeah, and that's the danger when they talk about the ozone layer disappearing is we don't want to get a ton of it down here. It's having too much can also be a bad thing, but we do get a small amount.
Right. For lack of not being too scientific, it trickles down here. Just enough where outside air, according to EPA, has about 0.05 parts per million of ozone. So all ozone is oxygen. You take 3 oxygen molecules, that's O2, and if you strike those with a lightning bolt or the right UV wavelength, it will make one of those split off, so you got 2 O1s floating around the air, and they're going to join a gas molecule, not a gas molecule, but they're join another oxygen molecule. Now you got O3, right, and that's a very loose bond. So its job, these 2 O2s have been buddies forever, and they're floating around. All of a sudden, they got this guy joining them, and they're like, we don't like this guy. Well, next time we see something that he can do, we're going to kick him out. Gas molecule floats around. Oh, there you go. Let's make him join the gas molecule. So they kick him away. He joins the gas molecule, helps break down that gas molecule. What's left is oxygen.
Just simply O2.
So it's just another form of oxygen.
Yeah,
Now,
I think we've all probably seen this in action, though. It's, the majority of that ozone that we get is from the sun. It's that UVV energy.
Right.
But we also get it from lightning strikes that occur during storms. And when those lightning strikes occur and it creates that excess amount of ozone, we've all walked outside after that storm and we go, man, it smells great out here. Oh, it just smells like spring, or it's
Nice
just fresh,
fresh
clean
scent.
spring rain. That's Mother Nature's way of controlling those gases or those odors that are outdoors. It's created an excess amount of ozone, and it's not really the ozone we're smelling. It's the clean air, or the lack of
The lack of
dirty
smell,
air. Yeah,
right.
The lack of smell out there. So Mother Nature has a couple of different ways of creating it, but we've all seen it in action, and we've seen how it works. I think one of the important things to note with that, though, is that ozone gets used up pretty quickly. I mean, an hour or two after that storm, does it smell like that anymore?
it has a half-life of 16 minutes. So if there's no gases for it to attack, which is virtually impossible, indoors especially, there's plenty of gases for it to attack. So the challenge with ozone indoors, though, is with the EPA. If you go on the EPA website and they talk about ozone air purifiers, they don't like it if you put an ozone generator next to your bed at night and blow ozone up your nose while you're sleeping. We don't agree with that either.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different way of doing it.
Right.
You can put low levels of ozone in the ducts and bring the gases to the ozone generator, just like we're bringing dust and germs to an air cleaner or a UV light, and get the same thing accomplished.
Right. Well, to take that a step further, we know that there's some natural processes that go on outside. When it comes to our industry, and there's a lot of different products out there today that talk about oxidizing gases and odors and breaking these things down, we see a lot of terms and terminologies out there. Steve, I see things like activated oxygen, trivalent oxygen, singulate, charged, saturated oxygen.
UVB,
Yeah,
oxidation agent,
I hear-
plasma fields.
Yeah, plasma fields of particle peroxides. That almost sounds poetic when I hear something like that. I love the sound of that. But we hear about photochemical UV and broad spectrum UV. And so we've got all these different terms out there, but what are these things?
They're all a different word for ozone. We don't even call it ozone because ozone freaks people out. So we call it UVV. We call it what it is. It's ultraviolet V energy. Okay? You could call it corona discharge. That's what's made with lightning bolts. And there's these units that have these little ceramic plates in them that you turn them on. And if you turn the lights off and look inside of them, you'll see little blue lightning bolts. And what they're doing is as the oxygen's passing through there, it's creating ozone. Electric motors create ozone. There's copy machines create ozone. So there's other things that create ozone, but inside of a home, you don't want to overproduce ozone with a box somewhere that's made to create ozone in the living space. We don't agree with that either. I would never want to fill a home with ozone. Now, with that said, there's our times you would like to do that. For example, you had a fire in the home. Let's say you had a fire in the kitchen and it smelled the whole house up.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a large ozone generator, rent one, or there's companies that do this that will take that large generator and put it in and blast the house with ozone.
But there's nobody in there typically
Right.
when
You
that
have to leave.
occurs.
You have to leave. So that's an application for ozone, but we're talking about maintenance of ozone, of gases and contaminants in the air.
So, Steve, we talk about, that there's safe ways, there's proper ways to use ozone, and there's not proper ways to use ozone out there. So what are the actual proper levels, if we're going to be safe, if we're going to use it responsibly, what are the proper levels of how we can use ozone?
Well, before I get into the proper levels, let's talk about substance, what we're trying to deal with, compared to the volume.
Okay.
So, for example, if I went around your neighborhood and asked all your neighbors, is ozone safe or dangerous? What are they going to say?
Yeah, everybody's going to say, of course it's safe for you. It's
Ozone.
not-
Ozone.
Oh, ozone. They're going to say it's bad for
Yeah,
you.
okay. They're going to say ozone alert, ozone hole, ozone warning. Every time you hear the word ozone, it's a negative
Yeah,
connotation.
my doctor tells me not to breathe ozone.
Right. So now what if you asked the same question or a different question to the same people and said, what about oxygen? Is oxygen safe or dangerous? What would they say?
No, they're going to say it's a safe gas. It's going to end well. It's going to end poorly if we don't have oxygen. So-
And it will, too. So right now you're breathing 21% oxygen. That's typically what's in the outdoor or indoor environment. So 21% oxygen is a safe level of oxygen. If I pumped up the oxygen level in this room to 80, 100%, you'd be blind in 3 minutes, dead in 10. If we lit a match, we'd all blow up. So should we outlaw the use of oxygen?
I wouldn't think so.
No. So oxygen is a substance that we need. Ozone is too. We just don't want overabundance of it. So ozone is Mother Nature's way of oxidizing gases, but it's done in a specific amount outdoors. Outdoors has about 0.05 parts per million of ozone. So indoors, the OSHA, pretty strict organization. Any
Yeah,
contractor that's listening now
Again,
will tell you
regulating
that.
our businesses,
They
absolutely.
say in an indoor environment you can have the up to 0.10 part per million, twice what's outside.
Well, that's in an 8-hour workday.
8-hour
So
workday.
a little bit of a higher level, but for a shorter period of time.
But why don't they say zero? Because they know ozone's created with copy machines and other things, so
Yeah.
they put a limit, and the limit that they give is probably much lower than what the limit would be if it's going to be injurious to our
All right,
health.
well, they know that it's always there. We can't get away from the fact that there's ozone out there. So
Right.
if your doctor tells you to not breathe ozone, I don't know what you're going to do about that because
Well, if a
there's
doctor
always a certain
says,
amount
let's
of
put it this way, if he says, do not buy an ozone generator, don't fight with the consumer. Sell them a UV light without ozone.
Yep.
Now, we're not here to try to convince people you have to have an ozone generator. What we are trying to say is that it is a way of oxidizing gases. It's going to get rid of things that are causing concern, right? So there's a good way, a proper way of using it.
So how can we do that? We've already talked about there's a non-proper way, which are those room ozone generators, and they're creating ozone through that corona discharge. It's like
Right.
the same type of ozone that we get from lightning strikes. You can create a lot of ozone in a very short period of time by doing that. But knowing that ozone's high levels of it can be dangerous for us to breathe in a typical environment. Would it make sense to blow that stuff up your nose while you're sleeping at night to have an ozone generator in your room?
No, it makes no sense at all.
Typically doesn't make any sense to do that. Again, there are some positive uses with that. We talked about using it for restoration or damage that occurs during water or fire. Mold restoration companies like ServPro will use those things. They're fantastic to use, but nobody's in the home. There's no pets in the home. The home is unoccupied. So what do we do where we can use it safely and effectively? We know it's one of the world's most powerful sterilants at breaking down different types of gases and chemical odors out there. How can we use that safely and effectively?
Well, remember we've been talking about in many modules about how much air we move with an air handler. It's 3 to 5 times an hour, 96 times a day, 1.2 million cubic feet of air a day go through most air handlers. So let's use the air handler as our air moving system, which it is to heat and cool. We can heat now, we can cool, and we can treat the air. So instead of treating the air out in the breathing space, we're going to treat it inside of a chamber. So we'll put low levels of ozone inside the duct, so as the gases come through, The return will hit it with ozone, puts it back out into the breathing space. Now we have less odors, less gases, less organic compounds, and virtually no ozone.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to like when we have the lightning strikes that occur outdoors. That ozone gets used up pretty quickly.
Right.
So by the time that ozone is actually oxidizing the gases and odors within our HVAC system, by the time it goes through the filter or the air cleaner that might be in there, by the time it goes through the blower motor and the evaporator coil or the heating and cooling coil that's in there, most of that ozone is getting used up. So that by the time that air is getting supplied back into our homes, if you had an ozone meter and you were trying to read the levels of ozone, you're going to read virtually 0 parts of ozone that are being supplied back into that home environment.
And we've done this with the test homes that we have. We've mentioned that we have 3 test homes, and we put the ozone generators on high in those buildings or in those homes, and we walk around with ozone detectors. We have never gotten a reading. Now some people say, well, geez, I smell it in my house. Well, you can smell ozone. Some people are hypersensitive to smells. They can smell it at 0.001 part per million. Very, very low level, almost non-existent.
Right, so a non-dangerous amount of ozone is
Can
still
be
something that
you
we
can
can smell.
Right.
Yeah.
So you might have that residual effect in some homes. Usually the comment we get is, man, since you put this unit in, my house smells so good.
Yeah, I've had people tell me, or homeowners say, I've got dogs in my home. I challenge you to, if you didn't know I had dogs and you came into my house and didn't see them, I challenge you to tell me that I had dogs.
Right.
You wouldn't even smell them anymore. So it does a fantastic job of, at that point, turning our clients' HVAC systems into a whole house air cleaner. And that's where that whole house air cleaning strategy really comes in, is when we apply that air cleaner to it, the use of that UVC energy, and now a small amount of that oxidation process.
Right. So let's just go through the features here of the ozone generating product, the UVV system that we have. It has the UV light. Okay, so it still has the germicidal kill that you need. And then that the smaller lamp on there, it's encapsulated in 2 cylinders. So we have a knob on it, and we can turn it up or down. And we do that for different size of homes.
Yeah.
Right? So now we can adjust the level without having to have 15 different units for 15 different size homes.
That makes sense.
So we got the UVC energy, but really what that smaller unit is doing, it's not doing any germ control. It's the oxidizing system. So it's that system that you're seeing on the slide there is a 45 watt. Remember we talked about the run germicidal's 36 watt.
So it takes a little more power
because
to
you have
run
2
it.
lamps.
But again, not very much. I mean,
Right.
44 watts is very minimal as far as the power is
It's
concerned.
got a patented adjustable ozone system. It's the only one on the market that does that.
Right. It's got
So-
that same ballast, that self-adjust or the
Right.
smart ballast for the 120 or
Slow
240.
start, right? 180 microwatt on the UVC. Now we also have units that we can split them. We can have a UV and the ozone separate.
Yeah, those are called remote models, and that's for unique installations where you can't use the ballast of that what we call the 403H. It allows you to place the UV in one area, have the oxidation in another area, and the ballast in a third area. So it gives you some flexibility with your installation. For most of our northern markets, that 403H is what's preferable. It's the very southern market in Florida for the.
Right. We're going to have a whole separate module talking about installation and the separate units that we have. But at the end of the day, what you need what should require people to have or ask them if they're interested in is a UVC for germs, the UVV for the gases, and then some type of air cleaner, hopefully a Polaris Meter 1-inch air cleaner, to take care of the particles. So really with 2 units, 3 technologies, you can control the particles, the germs, and the gases and get it to levels that are not injurious to our health. Remember, emptying that bucket. Our job is not to create a pristine environment where everything is gone. You know, our job is to create an environment where we get it down to a level where it's palatable for us. We can handle it now, right? So these modules, what we've been discussing is not only particle control, but on the UV side, how the UVC controls the germs, and then oxidation with UVV energy. So at the end of the day, what we can do is take your heating and cooling system and convert it into an air treatment center so we can heat, cool, and treat the air. When we get into the communication cycles, we're going to talk about how to take this technical information and get it into layman's terms for the homeowner. So that'll be our next modules that we're coming up with here that you'll see soon, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Take care.
Thanks.